Welcome to today's episode of the Declutter Hub podcast, your channel for super easy, no-nonsense advice on how to declutter and organise your home. Please welcome your hosts, professional organisers Ingrid Jansen and Lesley Spellman.
Hello and welcome listeners to episode 19 of the Declutter Hub podcast. I'm Ingrid.
And I'm Lesley.
If you have clutter and want to sort it out, this is the show for you. In today's episode, Lesley and I are talking about decluttering and organizing kitchens. I mean, the kitchen is the heart of the home and it's really important to get it right. So in today's episode, we're going to talk about accessibility, compromise and logic. Lesley, I love decluttering and organizing kitchens. It's one of my favorite things to do. How about you?
Yeah, absolutely. I think, a kitchen really is the heart of the home, as you mentioned, and it's really important to get it right for so many reasons. It can save you time. If you get it right, it can save you money so that you don't overbuy things. And obviously, it's your sanity because that's where you do so much and spend so much time of your day. Mm-hmm. So getting it right is absolutely key.
Yeah. I think why it's also so important is because a lot of us use our kitchens to prepare meals, to do dishes, to make up lunch boxes. But a lot of us also have a washing machine in our kitchen. So we need to do our laundry there. We're not lucky enough to have a separate utility room. So there's a lot of actions and things happening in a kitchen. So it's really important that it's tidy and neat and organized.
Yeah, and I think it also links into well-being as well, because if you've got what you need and you can cook the right meals, then there's well-being. You feel better about, providing nice, wholesome food for your family and things like that. And it's really important, isn't it, to get that kitchen right? And the bottom line is we've all got kitchens in all varying shapes and sizes.
Yeah.
So some people have got nice, big, spacious kitchens where they can pretty much have everything that they want. And other people, many people, are very tight on space and have to make compromise. And that's really what we're going to talk about today, isn't it?
Yeah.
We're going to talk about the compromises that you need to make in a kitchen, how accessibility is absolutely critical to that, and sort of trying to put things in a logical order so that it makes sense.
Yeah. So let's start with accessibility then. So can you share your thoughts about that?
I mean, there's loads of things that we need to think about in terms of accessibility as well. But what I'm thinking is things like you need to have things where they make most sense. So don't put your really heavy pots and pans right at the top. That needs to be kind of, what's the level that I'm talking?
Kind of below counter.
Below counter, yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So that, it's not dangerous for you to find things and to pull things out and so on. So it's really, and have them next to your cooker. So don't have to walk all the way across the other side of the kitchen to find things. When people get kitchens designed by kitchen designers, they often think about that. They often think about this triangle idea where, everything's got to be in a triangle in your kitchen so you can get around things, think where your dishwasher is, where your cooker and so on. And it's things like that we really need to think about ourselves as well when we're planning things. And sometimes, that logic is not there. So many kitchens that I work in, the sort of tea and coffee is in a completely different place to the kettle, in a completely different place to the mugs. And it's just things like that. There's so many things in a kitchen that we need to think about. And so many people have got different priorities in kitchens as well.
Yeah.
So for me, I'm not really a baker. So my baking stuff is kind of away, kind of high up, because I don't do much baking because I'm always on a diet, and so therefore I do not do baking. But for other people that are big bakers, they must need much more space. Yeah. As with all decluttering, there is not a one size fits all here.
Yeah, I think it's also, if you're not lucky enough to design a new kitchen in your home and you have to work with what you've got, it's still important that you think about accessibility, because I think it's called the flow of a kitchen.
Yeah,
it has to have the right flow. You don't want to make meters in the kitchen, even if it's a tiny kitchen. If you have to go to 4 different cupboards to just make a cup of tea, because your tea is somewhere different and your mugs are somewhere different and your spoons are somewhere different and your everything is somewhere different, you make mileage, you create a lot of work for yourself. So I think that's what we're talking about here today, having everything in a smart place and to have it accessible.
Yeah, and the problem is as well, if things, talking about making a cup of tea, if things are spread around the kitchen, what that also creates is barriers to us putting things away. So things tend not to find their natural home again. So it's things like that as well that are really critical. So accessibility is absolutely key to a kitchen.
And I think maybe also what makes sense to talk about is that if there are items that you don't use as much, those are the items that you put away in another higher up or a less accessible area, and the stuff that you use all the time, you want to have on eye level and close at hand.
Definitely.
Okay, right. Let's move on to compromise. What do we want to discuss about compromise?
I think different people have got different things that make them tick in kitchens. So some people really do dinner parties, absolutely love cooking, would use a lemon squeezer and a melon baller and lots of different things and a spiralizer and so on. Mm-hmm. And for many people, and I don't want to be mean here, but it's an aspirational thing. So I do have a spiralizer that has sat, to be fair, for a while. It's moved out because I feel mean because I shouldn't say that, should I? Not got rid of it quite yet because I still think, I'm definitely going to do spiralising. But that's an aspirational thing, really. It's something that you see. It's a little bit of a fad. But there will be people out there that are using their spiralisers all the time and absolutely love them. And I think I'm going to get there. It's not been long, but I think I'm going to get there. So I'm going to keep it for now.
Okay, you need to tell us when that's going to happen, Lesley.
Yeah, I feel bad now.
I know. I'm going to put the pressure on you now. Otherwise, that thing is going to be decluttered from your kitchen. Yeah. I'm going to check next time I'm at your house.
But I'm real in the same way as everybody else. I've got my things that I'm like, definitely going to do that spiralising one day. So it's not. We're definitely not perfect.
I appreciate your honesty as always.
Why do I say all these things on the podcast all the time? I'm like, oh my God, I've just said something I shouldn't have said. But anyway. Yeah, so that's it. So compromise. So really, it's all about finding a kitchen and having the right kind of stuff for the kitchen you've got. And sometimes, even though you are an amazing cook and you need all these things, if you're in a one-bedroom studio flat and you've got a tiny, tiny kitchen, you can't afford to do that. Yeah. So you have to compromise on the type of stuff that you've got in there. Yeah. You can't have every single appliance. Yeah. Or you can, but it's going to mean that you've got a very cluttered kitchen. So you've got to compromise in terms of what do you want? Do you want a space that you can work with well and easily, that's kind of streamlined and clean and clear, that you've got a little bit of clarity of thought when you're cooking? Yeah. Or do you want all the latest gizmos and gadgets in there?
Yeah, I think it's very true. I mean, if you have an ice cream maker in your cupboard and that you've gotten as a Christmas present or as a birthday present many moons ago and you've made ice cream once, let's be realistic. If you can't even put away another gadget like that you use all the time because you've got an ice cream maker blocking your kitchen cupboard, maybe this is now the time to declutter that ice cream maker and go, okay, it was fun while we tried it. We did it once. We had a great time. But realistically, I'm not going to make ice cream anymore. It was fun, but from now on, I'm going to buy it in the shops. Declutter that piece of kit you don't need. And so you can actually have room to put stuff that you actually do want to use all the time.
Because the bottom line is you can make a very good meal with a small amount of things, but then there are certain things that in addition to that make life easier, and those are the kind of things that we're talking about. Mm-hmm. And so when we are decluttering kitchens, where there is people are struggling for space, then we definitely are getting rid of those kind of melon ballers and apple corers and things like that, because you can do that differently. You can use a knife is the bottom line if you want to. And so if the apple corer is not going to tip you over the edge in a kitchen, but the ice cream maker absolutely might do.
Yeah. Or other things with electrical machinery in kitchens takes up tremendous amount of space. So if you, for example, have a machine that can do a lot of those things, you might be able to, if you have one machine that can do a lot of things, maybe you're able to declutter a couple of other machines that you could do it with the one machine. You know what I mean?
And I think, things are wrapped up in that as well. We've got guilt, haven't we? Because a lot of those kitchen accessories and appliances cost a lot of money. Mm-hmm. So your ice cream makers, your bread makers, your slow cookers, your Actifries, all those things, they take up huge amounts of space, but they also cost a lot of money. Yeah. So we still try to cling on to the hope that one day we will use them again. Mm-hmm. But we need very specific cupboards for those things. And as we say, sometimes it's hard. It's hard to make these decisions to get rid of things because they are, if we look at the decluttering principles of do we need it, do we use it, do we love it, then, there's an argument to say that you do need it and you do use it because you've done that on an occasional basis. But that's what we're talking about really with compromise. You can't often have it always if you've got a small kitchen. Yeah,
I think that is really, really true. I think also a good thing to talk about is glassware in this case. I know we've talked about electrical equipment, but I think glasses are also a perfect example. If you used to have a lot of dinner parties and just regular parties at home and you had a lot of, you're hosting a lot of people and you've got cocktail and whiskey and cognac and wine and and now maybe currently you're only drinking, long drinks and maybe an occasional glass of wine, maybe it's time to review all of those glasses that you have, because maybe they're not suitable for your lifestyle anymore and they're just cluttering up your cupboards, but you only can fit in four long drinks. Well, you can actually do with about 10 long drinks all the time, because maybe the kids now use long drinks, they're grown out of baby cups, and
you definitely need, if you're short on space, glasses is definitely something that historically you would get sets of lots of different things. But actually, if I want to drink a cognac, which I never would anyway, if I did, I could drink that out of a tumbler and it would be fine. I wouldn't need a specific cognac glass. So there's another example of a compromise that you can make. But again, we've got the problem with that sometimes these were gifts, sometimes these are family heirlooms and things like that. So these decisions are quite difficult to make. But it's all about having things in your kitchen that is fit for your life now. And actually, if you're just drinking a bottle of Pinot Grigio on a weekend and having a squash or a glass of water, then you don't need all these different glasses in your house if it's causing you an overspill.
I think we should also talk about food, Lesley. And I'm not talking about fresh fruit in the fridge, but I'm talking about spices, I'm talking about cans, I'm talking about those kinds of things. Because I find a lot of times in my clients' houses that there are so many cupboards with food and everything is everywhere. So what kind of advice do we want to give our listeners about spices and perishable foods?
I think it's very much, the first thing that I would say that I absolutely try to do in every kitchen that I ever work in is to try and separate out food and non-food. So try, if you can, I know it's not always possible, to not have cereals and things like that in the same cupboard as a plate or a glass or whatever, because it's automatically messy then and one spills over into the other. And like everywhere in the home, it really needs to be zoned, which moves me on then to zoning, be logical, be sensible about what you're putting together. So make sure your grains, rices, pastas, that kind of thing are all together. So I've got one cupboard, it's got grains, pulses, rice, pasta and potatoes in there all together. So all those kind of carb type things are all together. Quite often if you've got shelves and if you've got to use your wall cupboards for things like pastas and stuff, it's quite cumbersome, isn't it? So try and replicate a drawer or something that you can lift out, so you can lift it out in its entirety. So have a small basket where you've got all of your pastas and pulses together. Use a little clip at the top if you can to close them up, or use, quite often now they have those little sellotape things at the top, don't they? That self-closing type things. But just make sure that you've got something so you don't have to be rooting to the back of the cupboard all the time. So it's about almost trying to recreate a drawer scenario or something where you're containerising your pastas and your pulses and so on, and then lifting them down. And then when you've got out what you need, you can then put it back. And you've not got this problem of not being able to find things at the back. Because that also causes a knock-on problem of having too much stuff, not knowing what you've got, and overbuying. And that's a real problem in kitchens. So I think at the beginning of the podcast, I talked about the possibility of saving money with kitchens, which is really critical. And so many times, I go through and declutter kitchens, and there are, multiple pastas, multiple rices that have now gone out of date. And that's such a shame to see that go.
So true. And I think the same thing goes for cans as well. I know cans have a long shelf life, but if they're in the back of a cupboard and every time you buy a new can, you put it in front and that's the one you get out, the stuff in the back does go out of date at some point. So have a look through and also maybe line them up a little bit. And if you've got quite a lot of cans, maybe you can kind of put the fish stuff together and the vegetable stuff together and the soups together. So it's easier to see what you have, and maybe also put the labels to the front so it's visible. And with one glance, you can see, oh, okay, I'm running low on soup. I need to get some soup this weekend, or I want to get some baked beans because we're running low. And it's not all under all kinds of other stuff.
Yeah, definitely. I think for a lot of people, lining up bottles and cans in your cupboards may be considered to be a little bit over the top, but actually it allows you to see exactly what you've got, as you say, and it helps you to avoid overbuying. So if that's an easy process, when you say, right, I'm going to go and do my weekly shop, it should be an easy process for you to look in your cupboards, say, actually, I do need baked beans or tomatoes or whatever that might be. And actually also declutter things. If you've got a rogue can of green lentils that you've not used for 5 years, send it to the food bank or, something like that.
Yeah. And also I think what is important is that if you know that you don't have really big cupboards, don't buy a kilogram pack of cereal or 750 grams. Buy the smaller one. Because if it doesn't fit in your cupboard, it means it has to live on top somewhere, or it has to, it's not in the right place. So you're better off than staying in a smaller packaging.
I think we see this all the time, don't we, Ingrid? Where people have got these huge sort of cereal boxes on the top of fridges, and that's, bulk buying and buying bigger packs obviously is more frugal and it's going to save you money often.
Yep.
And again, that's a compromise, isn't it? Because actually, if your goal is a decluttered kitchen, a streamlined, more simple kitchen, then having 5 boxes of cereals on the top of your fridge is not going to help you create that look. So the compromise is, do I want to save an extra 50p, or actually do I want to have a decluttered kitchen?
Yeah. Excellent points, all of this, Lesley. So do you think we've discussed everything? Shall we move on to logic?
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
So what else do we want to include in this podcast? What do we want to say?
I think we've talked a little bit about logic, haven't we, in terms of having all your tea and your coffee together with your mugs near your kettle. Mm-hmm. It's logical then and accessible to have things in good places that you're not going to drop them and so on.
Yeah.
But really think about what works for you, because again, with all decluttering, there is not a one size fits all. What makes perfect sense to you, it might make, I'm just trying to think of an example, but some people might not think it's logical to have they might think it's logical to have your pulses, like your sort of, I don't know, pinto beans or whatever, if you've got things like that, in with your tins of kidney beans and not in with your pastas. And so it's all about what's logical and what makes sense for you, and what makes sense to me as a cook and what makes sense to somebody else is completely different.
Yeah.
So, but the most important thing is that you go through that thought process of where would that be if I wanted to find it. You can find it easily.
Yeah. And I think also, again, what I would like to mention again to our listeners is to say, really, when you take stuff out and you've got the same kind of item in different cupboards, get it out all together first. So if there's kind of rogue Tupperware in 4 different cupboards, first try and find most of it, do a bit of a declutter, and then think what is the best place to put things. And when you see the volume of stuff and you've decluttered some of it, then it's much easier also to decide where the best place is to live. And again, heavy stuff, I think, on below the counter, lighter stuff up. Because then you've got less chance of hurting yourself when you're trying to get something out of a cupboard.
Yeah, just talking about Tupperware. You've been to my house and you've seen how I keep my water bottles and my Tupperware, which can expand and go crazy and are quite difficult to keep together. So, I'm not the kind of person who is really meticulous and would line up every lid and things together. Mm-hmm. I know this, again, disappointing as a declutterer, but I'm all about sort of real life, and I'm busy in the same way that everybody else is. And so actually, I just want to put my Tupperware and I want to know where it is, and it all needs to be together. And so, yes, I'll make sure that everything's got a lid and so on. But what I do, my Tupperware has to go into a top cupboard because I haven't got any cupboards at the bottom that would fit it. So I use a big basket, just one of those collapsible baskets, and I just chuck all my Tupperware in there, lift it down, root around for what I want to find, and then take it from there. Exactly the same with the water bottles and flasks as well. Yeah. Because, with 5 of us in the house, we use a lot of water bottles, and that's definitely increasing at the moment with the move away from single-use plastic.
Yeah. Excellent points, all of this. So listeners, what do you think about this? Have you thought about streamlining your kitchen and putting stuff in the right place and having stuff accessible and putting stuff so you can find it? Just have a think about, have a look around in your kitchen. Where is everything living at the moment? Can you declutter some things that you hardly use all the time? And then you're well on your way to a more organized kitchen. So listeners, we're getting to the end of our podcast here. Lesley, any final thoughts you want to share?
Yeah, I think, we could talk for hours and hours, and we need to come back at a future date about, how to physically declutter a kitchen and give you some more hints and tips about that. But I think for today, the purpose of today was to get you to really think about your kitchen, whether or not you're thinking about things like accessibility, compromise and logic. Those are the 3 things. Focus on those. Look in every cupboard this weekend and really take a long, hard look at your kitchen and see whether or not it's working for you.
Perfect. Well, listeners, thank you so much for taking the time to listen today. If you'd like to get more tips and advice, please follow us on social media. We are on Instagram, Twitter and Facebook and have a lively, supportive Facebook group community where we chat all things clutter, and we'd love to see you there. If you don't want to miss the next weekly episode, subscribe to the Declutter Hub podcast on iTunes and Stitcher, and it will pop into your notifications each Friday. Thanks for listening. See you next time.
Thanks for listening to this week's episode of the Declutter Hub podcast. Check out declutterhub.com for more inspiration, and don't forget to tune in next week.